Welcome to the latest episode of Mondays in
Yay!
MMORPGs.
Yay!
Yeah, and today's gonna be another light topic. What was you?
hmm
You can remind them what the topic was again while I get my beverage ready.
Yes, today we're going to speak about how to really enjoy the video games for
Ah,
their
for
differences
their
rather
differences.
than being angry about this game because it doesn't have that feature from that other game.
Sure.
Basically, learn to accept the game for what they are and see if it's something for you or not something for you, and just enjoy it for what they are.
This is very good advice. By the way, thanks to everyone over at MMOs.com, mmorpg.com, massively OP, and etc. The internet and also the most recent YouTube video that we put out the other day, the internet has kind of blown up about our game over the last few days, and I've answered over 600 comments since Sunday, and my tendonitis flared up, so I get to run around with a bandaged hand today, and it's also
Yeah,
proving
but
to be kind of difficult to.
ah,
So I'm not actually drinking wine
ooh,
today.
oh,
Ooh, that
this is
smells.
serious
Yeah,
business.
this is serious. This smells divine, by the way. So this is I do have a bottle of champagne, and I was gonna pop it open today, but my wife put a stop to that and said, "No, that's for special occasions." And I was like, "But recording Mondays in MMORPGs is a special occasion." Apparently, it's not special enough for her because she won't let me open the bottle of champagne, and that's the only bottle we have. That's the only bottle of wine we have in the
She's
house right
right.
now.
I
Yeah.
agree with
So,
her.
so we did go out and buy. This is Hendrick's gin. I do.
Oh,
My wife and I both love gin, and this is their Midsummer Solstice gin. And I love this. What it says here. It says infused with natural flavors and floral essences in celebration of the eternal mysteries of the midsummer solstice, which is, I
oh,
think the solstice is past us. It was in March, wasn't it? Or wait, we're only in February,
no.
so it's coming up. Sorry, I'm forgetting.
you're yeah, you're too impatient to release Saga of Lysania. That's what's happening.
Yes, it's been. I do again. I want to say thanks to everybody because like we had our team meeting last night. We were actually talking about like the last couple of weeks has just been amazing. For us as a company, we can't talk about finances, but we've got new investors on board. The press is really good right now. The YouTube snippet that I put out yesterday, that little 45-second tease, everyone's loving it. I've got interviews coming out at mmorpg.com, at MMO somewhere else, massively OP. Like we've got interviews coming out in March. We've got the pre-order store reopening in March. We're getting all of our streamers and
That's why you
connections.
want to be in March.
Yes, that's why I want it to be March already. Anyway, so today I'm not drinking wine. I'm drinking gin. Hendrix, if you want to throw me some money for, promo spot, I won't say no. But
Remember to drink alcohol with moderation and
yes.
wisdom.
Um, so a lot of people are like, "Ew, you drink gin by itself?" I actually do. My wife and I both like gin. We do have a bunch of so do you know what ginger ale is, Elma?
No, I
Uh,
don't. I don't like beer. I
no,
really
it's
don't.
not actually a beer. It's like a soda. It's a ginger flavored soda. It's not
Like
actually beer.
Schweppes.
Yes, like see, Schweppes is a brand, and Schweppes sells ginger ale. They also sell
All right,
tonic. They
then I
also
know.
sell tonic water. So yeah, it's like Schweppes. Schweppes is a brand. So we do have some of that, and I like to make when I make gin tonics. I don't actually use tonic water. I will often use ginger ale. I'm a big fan of Schweppes cardamom tonic water, which is great. But in this case, I'm actually just drinking straight gin today. And I have to say, I've had several versions of. I gotta look what's in this now because this smells divine. Do you have your tea, by the way?
No.
No tea.
So let's start immediately with
Yeah,
the
sorry.
topics
I'll
of the
get
day.
sidetracked. It just smells so good. I could just sit here and smell it.
So, you people, do you prefer when we talk about drinks or when we talk about MMORPGs?
Everybody likes drinks. What are you talking about? Mm. That has a nice, like, citrusy mm, tasting. All right, so yeah, you
Let's
shush.
go. Shop, shop.
All right, today we're going to be talking about, why we should be celebrating differences in games as opposed to getting upset and bitchy that games are different from each other. Um,
Exactly.
I'm gonna let you dive into this in deeper here in a second, but I will say that this is actually a topic that Eloa came up with today. But it did for me it was something that rung true because very recently, um, in at mmorpg.com in particular, we've been having this ongoing discussion with people about our game, and one of the people who was criticizing our game because it's an alpha product, and also we've not shared anything with the public for more than a year. So the only footage anyone has been able to see of our game was from a year and a half ago. Um, that person was criticizing that all Unity-based games look the same. And I would argue that that person is not on the surface argument of that is true. Because all Unity-based games start off purchasing assets from the pre-order store, which means they all look the same on a surface level on the foundation layer. But all of the games out there, if you look at games like Pillars of Eternity 2, Shroud of the Avatar, Pantheon is another good example, even though it's not launched yet. Um, Gloria Victis, etc. These are games, I think Gloria Victis is on the Unity engine. Anyway, all of these games started off with stuff from the pre-order store. If you go back far enough into Pantheon's videos or Shroud of the Avatar's videos, you'll see their early pre-alpha videos clearly showcasing store-bought assets that make them look exactly the same as all these other Unity projects. But the deeper that these projects go into their development process, the more original art assets the team can create and put into the game, which is a funny thing because on the surface level, if all you do is judge a game based on the art style, then you're not grasping the bigger picture, which is the fact that these games are all different. And something we talked about before we started recording this episode was the fact that if you take, say, um,
ESO, Final Fantasy, World of Warcraft, all in Unity.
yeah, yeah. So if you took those
Yeah.
three games and created them in Unity and they all looked the same, are they the same game? And the reality is that no, they're not, because all three of those games fundamentally are completely different games. They have completely different play styles, completely different mechanics, completely different leveling systems, so on and so forth, even though they are technically all MMORPGs, which brings us back to the point of this topic today, which is why we should be celebrating games for their differences as opposed to complaining that this game looks like this game or this game doesn't have the features from this game or blah 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 blah. So I will let you now dive in.
Yes, I wanted to bring this topic because this is something I speak a lot on my stream with people. And this is what I try to share. And this is how I experience my gaming life at the moment. I'm playing 3 different MMORPG right now: Elder Scrolls Online, Guild Wars 2, and World of Warcraft. And I love them very much. I could say almost equally, but for different aspects of them. And I every time I play them, I'm enjoying them. And the fact that I'm playing different games and that I'm truly enjoying them for what they offer to me and what I can get from them, it makes me a lot more patient towards the things that could bother me or the things that are not really ideal. If I'm tired about that game, or let's take a stupid example. My class get nerfed to the ground in that game. Well, I can compensate my frustration by just playing the other game and enjoying myself and grabbing that pleasure. Maybe a day I will be in a calm mood. I will want to really chill and relax in Elder Scrolls Online and do a bit of crafting. And maybe one day I will feel myself wanting to overcome and challenge myself, and I will want to do a Mythic Plus dungeon in World of Warcraft with a team. Or another day I will maybe want to learn how to play my character better in Guild Wars 2 and start to try out different builds. Um, I think at the internet there's way too much negativity overall. A lot of people are complaining about a feature or another there. And while I can understand, especially if you are very involved and emotionally attached to your game, it's really suck when it's transforming or evolving into something you don't like or you don't like anymore. But instead of focusing on those aspects, I really want to encourage people to get what they enjoy from a game and understand that each game can provide you a certain type of enjoyment that will be different depending of the time of the year or your mood or the way you can play or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think to further expound on this a little bit more, um, focusing on what makes games different is part of what makes them fun. And I do I like to talk about graphics a lot because I am in a constant battle with people at various websites because we have not shown anything publicly for our game in more than a year. So if someone wants to go look up what does Saga of Leucemia look like, they're going to find footage and video footage from back in late 2018. We did not publish a single image on social media or anything throughout the from I think March of 2019 until basically February of this year. So almost a full 12 months, almost a full year. Um, and anything people have seen is from back in the beginning when we, like every other product that's built in the Unity engine, were using assets from the asset store. That's one of the reasons we never had an NDA on our pre-alpha because there was nothing to hide. We weren't doing anything original in terms of graphics, so we didn't have anything that we needed to keep behind closed doors. Everything we were doing was throwaway zones and throwaway content. We were just plugging things in to make sure that we were able to get our fundamental networking systems up in place, the fundamental adventuring system and combat system in place, getting all of that stuff working so that we had an actual prototype that was working. Then we did what everybody else does. We went away and we started working on original art assets. And that's something that Cody and Joe were working on. Liz as well did some stuff for us before she went on to Naughty Dog. But working on original art assets is something that when we come out again in stage 3 and we start to preview what we've been working on for the past year plus, people are going to see that instead of back in pre-alpha, we were probably an 80-20 split or a 90-10 even, but like 80% store-bought, 20% original. Now we're closer to a 50-50 split, maybe even 60-40, meaning 60% us, 40% store-bought. And the deeper that we get into the alpha process, the more original art we will be putting into the game because our team will have more time to continue creating art. And we will eventually replace other store bought elements and continue to define our art style opposed to these other art styles. Now, I know because Pantheon just did another video a couple days ago. I'm actually really, I'm always enthused to see Pantheon coming out with videos because I can't wait to play their game. But it's also a great way for me to see that they are pulling away in their own unique direction with their art style, away from where we're going with our art style, which makes me feel very happy because as we both continue to get further down our development pipelines, we will continue to look more and more different visually. And we will all eventually get to the point where people won't be able to look at our projects and go, oh, that's a Unity based game because that's where we're at right now. But if you stripped all of that away, there are some very core fundamental aspects that are different for, say, us versus Pantheon versus, say, Shroud of the Avatar. Um, there are some visual similarities because all three of those games are built in the Unity engine, but they all three have extremely different uh, mechanics, playstyles, leveling processes, and so on and so forth. We would be much closer to Shroud of the Avatar if I had to pick a game that we're similar to in terms of the way our skill systems are going to work and so on and so forth. But then Shroud of the Avatar has like, and you've played this. I know that you didn't really care for the game, Eloa.
No,
Um,
I didn't really enjoy it,
it
to be
has
frank.
a lot of
But
solo gameplay. Like you can solo pretty much your whole way through the game. And at the time when we were playing with our community, it was still very much a solo based game. And I know in the last year and a half, 2 years now, they've started to make changes to make it a little more group centric in certain areas. But it's very much an open system where there's no classes. Whereas if you look at what Pantheon is building, they are building a class-based game. They also have some unique things going on with the elements. Pantheon is working with elements. They showed this in the video the day, like with the wind was pushing a character across the landscape, so it's called wind shear, and you need to like take a potion or something to have the resists to withstand the
Mm-hmm.
wind. We're not doing that. Shroud of the Avatar is not doing that. Crowfall's not doing that. Like this is something that is unique to what Pantheon is
Yeah,
doing. That's great. That sets Pantheon apart from other games, and that's something that should be celebrated. But
exactly.
if you see like the commentary from a lot of people on their video, there are a lot of people who are complaining that that's not enough. Like I want to see this, this, and this because I liked this, this, and this from these other three games. It's like, well,
That's the thing. Before you only had three MMORPG that were successful in
yes,
the market. You had World of Warcraft, EverQuest, and then I don't know what, different games at that time. You had very, very few games. And then World of Warcraft became super big, the super popular game that you know, and many other MMORPG tried to redo what World of Warcraft had done and try to reiterate the same success, emulate the same success. And of course, they failed because they were not trying to separate themselves apart enough. Now, in today's era, you have so many different games, and you could play them all if you had the time and the resource for doing so, and enjoying them exactly for what they are, what they bring to you. Black Desert will not offer you the same pleasure than Final Fantasy, Guild Wars 2, Elder Scroll Online, or Crowfall or Pantheon. Each of those games can address either a different public or the same public, but for a different reason. And I think it's so much more constructive to enjoy a game and celebrate and really focus on what you find fun in it and forgive the little things that bother you rather than very fastly being hurt and offended because the game is not exactly what you want. And remember that you always have the choice to, this game is not for me, or this game is not for me anymore. That's fine. I'm going to pick up that one. I have so much choice anyway. There's no reason to waste time being angry.
yeah, choices. That's a good thing to pay attention to. I something that drives me nuts, and I feel for the developers who have to put up with this. If you look at Shroud of the Avatar, obviously it's in a very much different place now than it was when it launched. Um, in the eyes of many people, it is a failed game. However, it still has a very dedicated community, even though it is smaller than what many people anticipated. And if you look at the community outside of the game who aren't playing the game, they will all tell you that the reason that that game failed was because everyone wanted Ultima Online 2.0.
Mhm.
And instead of building Ultima Online 2.0, they built Shroud of the Avatar. And if you look at Crowfall, or not Crowfall, if you look at Camelot Unchained, which is from Mark Jacobs, who did Dark Ages of Camelot, you will see that many people are complaining that he is taking Camelot Unchained too far in another direction, and he's not making it enough like Dark Ages of Camelot. And so you see these people in the community who are trying to pigeonhole these developers into recreating a modern version of a game that existed 20 years ago. The reality is that the industry has come a long way in 20 years, and even though you can look at World of Warcraft Classic as an example of a company taking a step back 15 years in time to recreate something, to do a redone version of that, the classic experience is not exactly the same as the vanilla experience. It is a modified version that has better graphics, better networking, you know, better infrastructure, better engineering, because things have improved over the last 20 years. And so
Mm.
it's not really the same experience as it was 20 years ago. So I feel for the developers of who have this celebrity status, because Pantheon, obviously Brad is no longer around, rest in peace, but when he was, that was one of the biggest, I thought, detractions from Pantheon is everyone wants them to make the modern version of EverQuest or the modern version of of Vanguard. And I say, you know what? Let's let them take inspiration from those games, but let's make Pantheon its own thing. Like, let's make Pantheon a name for itself so that it can stand alone as a game that was inspired by these other games of the past, but it is not a replication of or a copy of, because that's what happened, what you just mentioned a minute ago. Everyone trying to recreate World of Warcraft through these various clones of Warcraft over the years, none of those games were ever successful. And the reason was because they weren't actually making their own game. They were just making a reskinned version of World of
Mm-hmm.
Warcraft. And so ultimately people were like, why would I play your game? I'm literally going to get that experience playing Warcraft. So it's very important that companies think about the ways that their game can be different from other games and celebrate that.
Yeah, and I think it's very clear when you see the story of MMORPG that you had this period era where everyone were trying to copy Warcraft, and then you had the contrary happening. You had Guild Wars 2 revealing itself, and also title in the 2012, so just in the period of Cataclysm in World of Warcraft, and that's when we're trying to really be more unique and provide something different to the table. Guild Wars 2 was the first one to try no Holy Trinity. Okay, it might not have worked the best, but still, it was bold to do that. It was nice to experience it. And it's the first game where I really felt, oh my God, this is really different from World of Warcraft. All those features that make people happy to meet each other are really nice. And all those little things evolved and grew and went in a direction, and it inspired the whole industry. When you do not have enough difference and uniqueness, then the place becomes stagnant and it starts to deteriorate. You need to have a unique way of perceiving the world or the industry and the making of video games. Therefore, you can inspire each other to go further and beyond, and even go further into different ideas and bring something truly unique and different.
So I think this is you brought up Guild Wars 2, and I think it's a very good example to use because Guild Wars 1 from a playable experience is a completely different game
Mm-hmm.
from Guild Wars 2. Like, not even remotely the same type of gameplay experience. Because Guild Wars 1, you had, what is it, I think like 8 action bar slots that you had to preset before you could leave town. And those are the only things you could use until you got back to town and rechange them. You could go out with NPC followers and you could have, I don't even remember, like 8 or 12 person groups. Like you could have like 12 I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've played, but I did
I've
play.
never played it, so I
Right, so
cannot
I
tell.
did play like I don't know the first 5 or 6 expansions. I don't remember how many expansions there were. I did play it for a long time, and I went back over the years and played all the expansions. But it's just been so long that my memory is hazy. But I remember, like when you first start off, you can have like 2 or 3 people in your party, and then you can have 5 or 6, then you can have 7 or 8, and you could eventually have this huge party. And the nice thing was that you could either fill it with other players, or you could fill it with NPCs that you could hire at camps. And it allowed you to, in the times when you didn't have your friends online and you still wanted to go do quests and stuff, you could just hire some NPCs from town. They weren't going to be as good as other players, but you could still complete the storyline of the game and have a lot of fun. Then Guild Wars 2 came out, and I remember kind of being shocked because it was the same world that I knew, but suddenly it went from being kind of a top down over the shoulder game to being a traditional third person kind of
Mm-hmm.
MMORPG experience with like the public events and like a traditional MMORPG leveling experience and everything else. And I remember kind of being like, wow, like this is a completely different game. And that's not a bad thing. Whereas I can go back to the launch of EverQuest 2. Um, it was basically they took all of the mechanics from EverQuest 1 and they just reskinned it and made it look better and then set it in a different time period to give it a different lore and then launched EverQuest 2. So the core version of EverQuest 2 kind of had you had the World of Warcraft vibe going on where it was like the city of Freeport versus the city of Kino, so good versus evil, and each had their own continent,
Mm.
and you could you were working on quests within those continents, and then you had to take boats to get between them and everything else. But the interesting thing was that EverQuest 2 felt like EverQuest 1. It was essentially, the only difference I can think of at the very beginning was you had a lot more skills in EverQuest 2. It was a much more skill-based game as opposed to EverQuest 1, where you had a very limited skill set and a very limited hotbar. But at the core of it, it was still very much you need a full group to go anywhere to do anything unless you're close to town, and it felt like an EverQuest experience. And then as EverQuest 2 continued to develop and evolve, it began to become its own experience,
Hmm.
which was better for the game because it separated itself from the original. And that was something that I think helped Guild Wars 2 in the long run, was that when it launched, it was immediately clear this is a very different game targeting a very different demographic. It's the same lore and everything, but it's going to be a different experience, and we're trying something new as a company. And like you said, I think those are things that they make it unique, but they also are the things that should be celebrated about games, not complained about. Um, because if there's one thing that I really dislike about, you know, when you're listening to people talk about whether it's my game or other games in development, people always have their opinion of why the game sucks, right? It's always this game sucks because of reasons X, Y, and Z, and reasons X, Y, and Z are always without fail every single time based purely on opinion because everybody
Hmm.
has different opinions on what
Yeah,
makes a great game.
exactly. It's a little bit what your mother teach you when you're kids. You don't say this is disgusting. You say I don't like my dinner. You see a difference. Um, of course, yeah, there is kind of objective opinion you could have sometimes on certain game, like the developers team have not react fast enough with those bugs, or the launch was handled in a terrible way, or this class has really been nerfed now it's useless. Yeah, those are kind of objective opinion you can have, but other than that, in general, it's I like it or I don't like it or I don't like it anymore. And I think the reason why people can get so angry sometimes and so toxic, it's because they are being hurt. So they are emotionally attached or invest into their game or their character or the times they spend in a game, and they feel a sort of betrayal or, a
I
knife
have
in the
to,
back.
yeah, I have to ask a question though. Why do you think so? This is the question I have, and before you answer, I need to give an example.
Hmm.
Because my wife, for example, Chris does not like science fiction like I do. She will watch science fiction, but if it has aliens in it, she almost immediately will tune out if there's any sort of like alien presence. Like she just doesn't get into alien stuff. Robots or androids, not so much. But if there's aliens in the show, she's just like, nah, I don't really care for this. It's not my thing. No big deal. This is the key. No big deal. So why is it that MMORPG players in particular feel like you just said? Why do they feel hurt? Why do they feel like they've been stabbed in the back if a game does something that they don't like? Why can't they just say, meh, it's not for me and move on? Why do you think it is that people get so emotionally invested?
Yeah, I think it's just because they invest they a part of themselves into the game. It's not just I'm playing a game to have fun anymore. It's not fun anymore. I put it on the side. It's really I've put effort. I put time. I've made research. I've used money. And I have created my character, which is my sort of alter ego, my baby or my husband or my wife or whatever it is. I have built a community. I have built relationship with people. Oh, those people have left the game. Now I'm alone. You have so much aspects that are more complex,
So
emotionally speaking,
it's
in
become
an
an avatar.
MMORPG than in solo game. And even solo game, I can tell you and swear that you can have the same sort of attitude. I loved Oblivion, but then Skyrim, they change everything. I really don't like that. It was better before. This is always when you have this feeling of being betrayed, or seeing something that you loved that evolved in something you don't love anymore, or the fear of change, or something like that. And I think it will be interesting if you guys watching this video can take the time to think and introspect a bit and see how is your behavior towards video game. How are you reacting? Why are you very passionate sometimes, maybe, or maybe why you're capable of having a lot of distance. But it's interesting to realize why is it cause, and it's never the cause is never the developers. The cause is never the game. The cause always come from within. The attachment you have with the game, the investment that you do emotionally, time wise, or whatever. Yeah, I think um, you can avoid yourself a lot of anger and disappointment by having another stance on that.
I think that's a good point. People invest so much time in MMORPGs as opposed to any other form of entertainment that it probably does feel like an extension of yourself. You know, it's become this
Mm-hmm.
avatar of self, and so I guess betrayal is a good that's a good word to use in terms of explaining why people might feel that, a way about a certain thing. But it also, I don't know, it raises a lot of questions for me. Because on the one hand, somebody brought this up because it's been in our Discord. I'm gonna pull it up so that I can quote it because I thought it was a funny thing to say, and it kind of ties into the conversation a little bit about, people get so invested in things. Let me pull up Discord here. I can't do it on PC because you and I are talking. I don't want to minimize the
Yeah,
video
it's
here. So
blocked.
yeah, so
No
I
more
gotta
PC.
pull it up on my phone. It is in our off-topic chat section on our Discord. Um, so to some degrees, you can't please anybody because some people are just so negative about everything, and that's a personal thing that they have to change. So basically, on the one hand, you've got people that if you don't, so I'm putting myself in the developer's shoes for a minute. Um, if you go dark and you work on your game, but you don't tell anybody that you're working on the game, people complain because you're not sharing enough information with them. But then the moment you start going on forums, in my case, and you're actively interacting with the public on places like mmorpg.com, you will inevitably come up against someone or some individuals who will then say, and I quote, now I got to pull it up again, um, stop spending so much time commenting and go work on your game. And it's like, okay, I don't think you guys, it's like a I can't win scenario because if I'm
Mhm.
not sharing information with you, then I'm not a good developer because I'm not giving you information and I'm not feeding your need to know things all the time. But then when I do come and spend a lot of time commenting and having back and forth and sharing with people, now I'm
And hurting your hand for it?
right. Well, that's side effect. I'm still the bad guy because now I'm not actually working on the game. I'm wasting time commenting and interacting with the trolls of the internet. And this is one of those things where it's like it almost seems like the gaming community around MMORPGs has gotten to a very negative state over the last 10 years. And I don't know why we got to this point. People will, and the gaming community likes to lay the blame at the feet of publishers and say, well, it's the fault of the publishers because they're developing these games that have predatory cash shops and they treat us like cattle. No one respects our opinions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have another group of people say that crowdfunded games are all a scam and that people are just running off with your money and they're taking 8, 9, 10 years to develop games, and that's bullshit. It should only take 3 years to develop a game. They're just using your money to go on high paid vacations and sit around and play video games all day, and they're not actually doing anything with your money. And it almost feels to me like it's this never ending cycle of vicious negativity. I would love to know what the source of this is.
I believe that first people that are complaining or people that feel anger or disappointment or feeling of betrayal, that emotion will lead them more easily to share it on the internet. And then they are all, how can I say, uh, and this is beautiful. And I also saying it's part of the human nature. I saw a very beautiful video, which is not related to gaming at all, yesterday, but I don't like how it is. So I think about how I don't like how it is, which is attracting another thought of I don't like how it is. And then I'm going into a group of people that also don't like how it is. And we can speak about how much we don't like how it is together. And it's building up, building up, building up. It's all very negative. It's a very negative spirit.
There's actually a term for that, and I can't remember it off the top of my head. So what you're describing outside of the gaming sphere, here's a perfect example. So on Facebook, as with Twitter and any other social media network, um, you can like and dislike things. You can hide things that you don't want to see. You can block people you don't want to listen to. Echo chamber. That's the phrase for this. Everything becomes an echo chamber. So, as an example, during our recent traumatic elections in the United States, um, regardless of what side of the political fence you're on, whether you're for Trump or against Trump, it does not matter because both sides are guilty of this. If you're on Facebook as an example and you're for Trump, then anytime you see a post or a video or someone talking negatively about Trump, then you're going to block that person or you're going to hide that thing so that you don't see it. Well, the algorithm remembers that. And so in the future, the algorithm won't show you those things. So you only see the things that reinforce your beliefs. This is the echo
Mm-hmm.
chamber that happens. The flip side of that, if you're somebody who is not a Trump supporter, then you will only see things that are people talking negatively about Trump. And so your reality becomes everyone hates Trump. And that's not necessarily the actual reality for either case. The echo
Mm-hmm.
chamber, but because of the way the algorithms work, everyone is living in their own echo chamber in the 21st century because we all have
Yeah.
likes and dislikes, and all of the internet, every single platform that we use, is based on algorithms that track our likes and dislikes to feed us information based on what we like because those are the things that we want to see because it makes us feel happy at the end of the day. For good, for better or for worse, that's how this works. And so if you surround yourself with negativity and you're constantly complaining about X, Y, and Z, and that's all you do on the internet, that becomes your reality because
Yeah,
that's what you're focused
exactly.
on and that's what the algorithms know that you focus on. Therefore, it feeds you all that negativity to keep you happy.
And this is a very good example and something very easily to understand for everyone how that works because there's an algorithm at play.
It's not
But
conspiracy.
but
This is
it's a
algorithms.
yes, but it's an illustration of what's happening in real life outside of internet. And it's not because there's an algorithm in the world, but it's because your attention, your focus will go on certain things. Your attention will completely disregard everything else. So therefore you are saying, I believe in this. And you're affirming your belief. Everything in your reality will be a proof that your belief is right. You will say, oh, but yes, I was right. There and here,
There's
another
the
proof.
proof.
Oh, and there's proof. But you are not seeing all the other possibilities because your mind is configured into that one beliefs. So I really like that because you can observe something that happened in a confined environment like internet. You can really understand a concept. And then this concept is a reflection of something else that happened on a more subtle level in real life. Therefore, you can observe your comportment, your behaviors into that internet thing and break free from it. So you will be able to do that in your real life as well and break free from that and really expand your horizon and learn to focus on the stuff you want, focus on the stuff you love, rather than focusing on what you don't want and you don't like. There's a sentence to say where focus goes, energies flows. If you focus on the stuff you hate, you put a lot of energy and attention in that, so that's what you will get back in return. If you focus on, I love this, I appreciate that, this is really fun, and then that's what you will receive back, and your life will be so much more pleasant. So try it with video games, and then try it in your life.
This goes back to, I know we've had this conversation offline, and we haven't had this conversation in a long time. But there is the belief system of you create your own reality through conscious thought. So if all you're ever focused on is negativity, that's all you're ever going to see or interact with or feel is negativity. Whereas if you try to focus only on the positive, now I'm somewhat ambivalent to this because I have had days when no matter how positive I'm trying to think, shit still happens, and it's like, so, there are always going to be incidents that come up, but I think especially when we're talking about the video games in particular, with the industry being where it is, um, the other comments that I've been seeing a lot of in the last couple of weeks is a lot of people. This somewhat relates to our topic of the week discussion where we were discussing subscription prices. In at mmorpg.com, the conversation came up around, well, what is the value of a game? Not a subscription, but how much is too much to pay for your video game? And you have a whole bunch of people who think that you know anything more than free is too much to pay for a video game, and anybody who's charging beyond free is a bad person. And then you also have people who think that any independent project is going to be shit by the very nature of it being an independent project, and the only people qualified to make video games are AAA. But then I always come back and say, I have played video games my whole life. I would probably bet that I've played over 1,000 games since I started gaming in the 80s, right? Um, Across all platforms, throughout all generations, I have played a lot of video games, and I have never, not once, seen any sort of pattern or data to suggest that all independent games suck and all AAA games are awesome. Quite the opposite, in fact. What I have seen is that a lot of independent games are good, some are crap. A lot of AAA games are good, some are crap. None of it has to do with whether or not the game is actually good or bad. It has to do with whether or not I liked that game. That's a personal preference thing. So as an example, I used this recently. I was like, I paid $60 for the most recent Call of Duty. Is it Call of Duty? Yeah, I think Modern Warfare. Yeah, it's Call of Duty. It's the most recent one that came out like, I don't know, 4 or 5, 6 months ago. I bought it for the single player campaign, knowing that it is a multiplayer game, right? So I went into it knowing that I'm going to get the least amount of enjoyment out of it compared to someone who buys it for the multiplayer component with the hundreds of maps and etc. So my
Yeah.
my uncle is a good example. My uncle bought the most recent Call of Duty specifically to come home after work to get online with his buddies. He's 50, but he's always loved. Like I remember having all night sessions with my uncle when we used to play James Bond, GoldenEye on the Nintendo 64. It was just
Oh, Golden
that's
Eye, that was cool.
Oh, that's such a good game. And me and my cousins and him, we'd have all-nighters, like 2 nights in a row sometimes, and just that's all we would do, would play multiplayer GoldenEye. So his love of the multiplayer aspect goes back to that. And then the next one we did was Halo, the first Halo game. I was like the headshot king of our family for like a whole year. And he loves that multiplayer. So for him, when he bought Call of Duty, he bought it to play the multiplayer. He has gotten hundreds of hours of entertainment out of that game, and he loves it. I bought it, played the single player campaign, like almost peed myself 3 or 4 times. It's so intense. The graphics are amazing. Like it really makes you feel you're having to do questionable things as a soldier that made me like get sick to my stomach. Like I can't believe I'm doing this. I don't want to choose this action, but I have to because this is what I got to do. And at the end of it, I was like, all 10 or 12 hours of it or whatever it was, I got done and went, holy crap, that was really intense, but also really, really, really short. So for me, I did not get that much enjoyment out of that game for the $60 that I paid for it. So I was like, not that great of a game to me. Meanwhile, I paid $20, I think, for Pathfinder Kingmaker, which is an independent top-down isometric RPG in the Pathfinder universe. Played that game for probably 100 hours and got way more enjoyment out of it than I got out of a AAA game that I paid 3 times the price for. So I can use that as a very good example of how it has nothing to do with the graphics of a game or the polish of the game or how much money it took to build the game or who published the game or who developed the game. At the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, the only thing that really matters is whether you have fun playing it. And it's
Yeah.
it's a futile exercise to try to push your point of view on someone else. It's like religion. I can believe what I want to believe and you can believe what you want to believe. It doesn't have to match. We could still be friends. We could still have drinks. We could still have communication. My wife and I, as a good example, vastly different viewpoints on religion, and yet we're married. We love each other. We have a great relationship. But, I'm an atheist and she's not. And so there is differences there. Just because you have differences doesn't mean you can't still enjoy things together. And I think that's where we all have to figure out how to get to within video games is understanding that just because you didn't like the game doesn't mean it's a bad game. It's just it wasn't for you. So
Yeah.
guess what?
And that's
Let it
okay.
be. Like who
Yeah,
cares?
exactly. This is exactly that. I think it's a perfect way to finish this discussion. You don't like
Sure.
it, let it be.
Let it be. So yeah, obviously, those of you who are tuning in, um, I think there is a topic here of looking beyond the graphics of a game and accepting that games can be different and should be different. Not all games should be the same. The industry does not need more World of Warcraft clones. The industry does
Mm-hmm.
not need more Elder Scrolls Online clones or more Final Fantasy 14 clones. The industry needs more originality. And that's
Mm-hmm.
where I mean, there's so many independent projects going on right now, as well as I saw a sponsored game on Facebook yesterday. I cannot remember the name of it. It's a Steam game. It's like early access or something. It's like about a somebody who's blind and somebody who's deaf. Um, but they're not humans. They're like little creatures or something, like flowers or some sort of. I don't remember. I don't remember what it was, but um, like I saw the game and went, this looks kind of quirky and fun because it's not your traditional like humanoid adventure. It's kind of like there was a game yarn. It was like you're a character built out of yarn, and like
Okay.
Unraveled, I think is what it was called, and then Unraveled 2, I think maybe were the names of those games. And those are these little independent projects that are really unique, and they don't have anything in common with any other games, and that's what makes them fun and
Mm-hmm.
different is because they are something completely different. And I think that's what people should be focusing on rather than trying to force the sameness. Like, right? Rather trying to force these companies to put the same things into the game that are in these other games. Let them do what they're going to do and then try that game for what it is and see where it goes. See where it takes you. See if you like it or not. I don't know. Comments, etc. from the community. As
Yeah.
always, you're welcome to comment. And again, don't forget to stay tuned, subscribe, etc. We are really close, by the way, to March 18th for the Saga of Lucemia.
Yeah. So
Um,
close that and fail forget that we're still in February.
yeah, it also doesn't help, glass of gin every now and again. What's the date? But yeah, if you haven't had a chance yet, head over to the Saga of Lucemia social media channels and check out the little preview video that we put up a couple days
Yeah.
ago and check that out. So,
Take care of yourself. Be
till next time.
happy. See you too. Bye.